Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 345, recorded for March 4th, 2026. Damn it, my excuse is now gone for DR. Good evening, Matt. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, other than my car's in the shop because they said it would be done, but then it wasn't done. So then I had to Uber home. And so we're recording late. And so now it's super late for you. Ryan's lost in feeding his kids. And Jonathan, I think, turned into a pumpkin. So hopefully Ryan joins us here as soon as his kids are properly fed and no longer trying to take over the house. Well, yeah.
Kids run your house. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, is it Lord of the Flies? Like I just imagine Ryan's house is just Lord of the Flies all the time. So,
well, he's outnumbered.
Yeah, he's outnumbered. So I did listen to Jonathan and you crush last week's episode. Great job. Nice work. Appreciate it.
I don't know why. I really enjoyed that. I think that was one of our better ones for some reason. Like at least of Jonathan and mine together.
You guys had some good discussions, which I was like when we'd spend a little more time on some topics talking about different ways to think about it and different stuff. And I can tell you right now, this week you probably have a bunch of that as well. So we're now in a new world, which is going to probably change the cloud world forever. So it's going to be kind of interesting. But let's just get into some basic news, then get into the fun stuff here. So first up, Anthropic acquired Vercept to advance Claude's computer use capabilities. There's a team specializing in AI perception and interaction to strengthen Claude's computer use capabilities. I've used Claude computer use. It's very slow. So I am hoping Vercept picks up the pace of that and makes it a little bit better. Claude Sonnet 4.6 did show substantial improvements in computer use benchmarks, jumping from 15% on the OS World evaluation in late 2024 to 72.5% today. The model is now approaching human-level performance on tasks like navigating spreadsheets and completing multi-tab web forms. Computer use enables Claude to operate inside live applications the way a human would, handling multi-step workflows across tools that cannot be automated through code alone. This is Anthropic's second acquisition in a short period, following the purchase of Bun, which was tied to the Claude Code milestone, and the pattern suggests Anthropic is actively acquiring specialized engineering teams rather than just technology assets. So I look forward to seeing what we get out of Vercept.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using Claude more and more in PowerPoint and Excel. I have a side project at work where it's like generating the Excel files, and it's fairly impressive. I mean, it's definitely making some of the same mistakes over and over again. And I'm like, no, please actually use formulas. Don't just dump the number in there. Therefore, if you ever tweak it in the Excel, it is all tied together. But overall, I definitely started with 4.5 on a few of these projects and got upset with it, and then moved to 4.6, and it seems to be doing a lot better. Just kind of working through it on both, leveraging the native built-in, I'm going to call it native, but the plugin for Claude, as well as the, actually just interacting with it.
Yeah, I'm a couple things. It seems like every day I have to update Claude Code because they've released new features and new capabilities. And
yes.
I've gotten sub-agents working pretty well. I've gotten, then there's all kinds of new skills coming out. There's all kinds of different things that are just, make it better and better. And so it's constantly reading, refining your pipeline, refining what you're doing, tweaking it, and then rinse, repeat, and go through the whole process again. So it's sort of interesting, but it's so cool because it's such a fun time. It's sort of like the early days of the internet when we were figuring out, we don't have to just use HTML. We can use CSS and we can add graphics and we can do all this other cool stuff. I remember all that developing in the web and, getting out of the box gardens of Prodigy and AOL. And, then people started putting video on and it was super slow and dumb because it was all on dial-up. And you're like, well, that's not going to be that's not a reliable use case. And then, everything's evolving. Broadband comes out. All that. Like these type of major paradigm shifts, if you're paying attention to them, are really interesting. So it's for a history buff who likes these type of changes, it's kind of cool to see a new technology going. Now, I am not super excited about risk to my future prosperity as an employee / career. I'm not super excited about some of that stuff, but I'm hoping to become an AI native who can use all these tools really well, and then that should hopefully give me some security because I'll be an expert at running people and AI people.
Yeah, I'm not quite as advanced with you. I've started playing with sub-agents here and there. I mean, I have a pretty good kind of workflow for a couple of my projects that I have. Hey, write it, review it by multiple different personas, kind of iterate through it and whatnot. I do want to play with more sub-agents. I'm just not there yet. It's kind of one of those things I need to sit down and just dive deep into for a little while. I'm trying to, the other thing is I'm trying to teach, especially different teams and whatnot at my company how to do it, because it's amazing how much faster you get at things, and then let alone working on multiple projects at once. So like yesterday I was sitting there and I was like, oh, here, go do this spike work for this thing I need to do and go work on my little side Excel project. And oh, hey, let me go jump on with one of my employees and kind of walk through a technical issue that they were having. So, and doing it all three at once, it was like losing track of the different projects too I was working on, but it's kind of fun still.
Well, and like I still strongly encourage like everyone on my team, and even if you're here just listening to us and you're trying to figure out good ways to use it, like create your boss as an AI prompt. Like the basic things. Assuming you have a good relationship with your boss, you probably know things he cares about, things he worries about. When he reviews your projects, reviews your work, what are the things he always asks you about? What's his personality type? All these things, you can add them into a prompt and you can save that prompt. You can even turn it into a skill if you want to get fancy. But use what you're sending to your boss and say, hey, I'm about to send this email to my boss or to this project manager or to whoever. And you have these skills or you have these prompts, and like put it in the system. And then you can find out, like, it gives you good feedback. I was telling someone was trying to write a business case for a new headcount for something, and they had some data. And I was like, this use case doesn't make any sense to me. The math's bad. And I said, I had to go present this to our chief of staff, and if I give this to her, she's gonna, blow it up. So I need you guys to fix it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, here, and I like have a prompt that's kind of, some things I know about her and how she thinks about business and things like that. And I asked it, like, what's the percentage of chance that you would even approve this as a headcount based on this email? And it comes back and it's like 40%. I'm like, so like, you really want this position? You really think this is important? You think a 40% is a good enough chance? And they're like, no. And so like, they took my prompt and now they've been rating, and I think they have up to like a 90% chance. Again, I don't know if AI is that accurate on that, but I'm like, hey, you're still making a better case. It's helping you refine the case. And like, people don't default to that yet. Cause again, like the people just aren't used to these things. And that's where it's interesting too, as you go through like transformation of your engineering team, getting them, it's the transition to cloud native all over again, but now it's AI native, and it's, it's a culture change. It's thinking differently. It's how do I use the AI to do the task, or how do I use agentic agents to do a bunch of different things? And so it's this paradigm shift, and it's cool. But like some people just aren't trying. I'm sort of like frustrated because I'm like, my default mode is how do I use AI to make this better? And like with Anthropic tools, which are great, it has enough, I've had enough historic conversation with it that it can mimic my writing style. So like it can help me write emails that are very similar to how I would write them, but I just have to tweak little minor things. And like all my reviews this year were written with AI, because it just, not that I didn't want to put the time into the reviews, but like, I have really clear points I want to make, but I'm not really good at the warm and fuzzies of why, these things are. So it helps me put, some of the wrappers around it, and like helps me suggest different action plans for the person to help improve in certain areas I'm telling them they need to improve it. So like and I've been giving those reviews now finally, and like the feedback is these are really good. This is really helpful. It gives me some guidance, and it's like, so, and I told them all, I'm like, hey, I use AI a lot. I'm not gonna hide that fact. I had a lot of reviews to do, but it's interesting to get the feedback. And they're like, and I tell them how I did it, and I'm like, look, I incorporated the feedback from other people, incorporated your feedback, I incorporated mine, and the things I thought you were doing well, and things we put this together as part of it. And they're like, this is cool. So they're getting it, but AI native is just the same as cloud transformation transitions, and it's going to take time for people.
Yeah, I'd say I'm not nearly as far as like the first thing I do, but I think in the last 2 weeks I'm spending a lot more time being like, okay, the first thing I need to do is do AI and have it review it, or have it scan it, or have it kind of think about it, versus even just the simple things of, hey, I'm having this error in Python, how do I fix it? Just and rather than going to Google, just going to AI. Especially if it has the context of your entire repo and everything else, it really does make such a dramatic improvement. And I remember seeing there was a Stack Overflow chart that I think we talked about in the past of like the usage of Stack Overflow in the last like 5 years. It's just this like plummeting line downwards of barely getting used. And it's fascinating because it's so much better and so much faster to get the same results. And I feel like half the time I'm like, on crack because how fast I'm getting stuff done, or on speed because I'm getting stuff done so much faster than I was before. So it's definitely a mind shift change, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm actively working on it for my own sanity.
Agreed. Except speaking of skills, I could use the segue if I'd read ahead.
Yeah, I thought I set you up for it a little bit.
A little bit. You tried, and I just didn't pick up the pieces you were putting down. Anthropic has updated its skill creator tool for Claude agent skills, now available on Claude.ai, Cowork, and as a plugin for Claude Code. This update brings software development practices like testing, benchmarking, and iterative refinement to skill authoring without requiring users to write the code themselves. The core edition is an eval framework that lets skill authors define test prompts, describe expected outputs, and verify skill behaviors across model updates. And a practical example given is the PDF skill fix, where evals isolated a position failure on non-fillable forms and guided a targeted fix. A new benchmark mode tracks eval pass rate, elapsed time, and token usage and can be integrated into CI systems or local dashboards. Multi-agent parallel eval execution is also included to reduce test time and prevent context bleeds between your runs. Comparator agents enable A/B testing between two skill versions or skill versus no skill, with blind judging to reduce bias and evaluating whether a change actually improved output quality. Anthropic knows that as the base model capabilities improve, some capability uplift skills may become unnecessary, and the eval framework is positioned as a step towards skills eventually being defined by natural language descriptions or desired outcomes rather than detailed implementation instructions. So again, the skill builder getting this is great because being able to QA them and be able to test different iterations of it is important, especially if these skills are like key to your SDLC pipeline. The ones I was giving you earlier about, like, you can create a persona and create it as a skill. Those ones probably don't need this, but for things that are actually in pipelines or in agentic capabilities where you want things to be specific, this is great.
Yeah, I definitely like the A/B testing and the multi-agent parallel for evaluation, kind of really getting that multiple things. It's the Ralph Wiggum's like, hey, run the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until you kind of get something out there, and get a consistent result. And I think that's just a great way to kind of build these things out and hopefully in a definable pattern where even though AI is by nature a little bit unpredictable, to get it kind of close to where you want it to be.
Great. Well, Friday was a bad day for Anthropic. Basically, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War head, basically has banned Anthropic from supporting the military, which then followed with President Trump banning usage in all federal agencies. Basically, they're saying Anthropic publicly refused to allow Claude to be used for mass domestic surveillance of Americans or fully autonomous weapons, citing concerns about current AI reliability and civil liberties. These two exceptions led to a breakdown in negotiations with the Department of War after months of discussions. The Department of War is moving to designate Anthropic as a supply chain risk at under 10 USC 3252, which has never been put onto a U.S. company before and typically only been put onto U.S. adversaries like Huawei, for example, was designated this in the past. Anthropic has indicated it will challenge any such designation in court. And from a practical standpoint, the legal scope of a supply chain risk designation is narrow. It would only affect use of Claude on Department of War contract work, leaving commercial API customers, Claude AI users, and non-DOW contractor use case clearly unaffected. Maybe. This is where things get tense because the way that the ban is worded is that you're not allowed to use anything that came from Claude. And so if the output of a Claude code session into a software product that then is sold to the US government, if that is considered part of a supply chain risk, that could be pretty devastating because a lot of companies, it may not be that you're selling to the government directly, but you're selling to Boeing or you're selling to a Lockheed Martin or to another, contractor. And so they are under these same regulations. So it could have really big ripples for Anthropic and Anthropic's future as a company. And interestingly enough, Anthropic in general is saying, we're basically saying that, they wanted to add all lawful uses to the contract. And they didn't feel that was appropriate and that they didn't want these things used for war. And they have good reasons for not wanting to use for war. There was a study that came out 2 weeks ago where war games were performed with using all the leading AI models. And I think it was something like 30 out of 31 simulations. They all went for the nuclear option at some point and destroyed major countries with nuclear. So yeah, maybe you don't want to use these AI models yet in agentic warfare, perhaps, if you want to not have nuclear Armageddon, Terminator style.
Which I also feel like goes against some of the core prompts that are in there. So I wonder if DoD, when they set it up, is getting their own custom core prompt, which removes some of those things. Because there's things in the core prompt that's like, do not harm people. War, in theory, always harms somebody. Whether you believe which side of it, there's still someone getting harmed. So I'd be kind of curious how either way it was getting around that. Then that's the only thing I can really think of.
Well, I mean, my understanding is that these models were deployed inside the DoD on servers inside DoD data centers. And so, those models may not be identical to the models that we had, for public consumption, of course, for obvious reasons. So I'm curious, it's interesting because, looking at this, you realize that Anthropic was involved in the taking down of Maduro. And even in this particular scenario, they have 6 months to ramp down this relationship, which then leads them into the weekend where they basically declared war on Iran with Israel and attacked them, probably using Claude data as well. And so I could see potentially where Anthropic, who has this desire to do no harm and to do the right things and, to be more aspirational than that, doesn't want their system used for government. But also they ran to the government very quickly. They're the first cloud provider to be available in federal government. So it's all very interesting. And to make it even more suspicious, if you're in the conspiracy theory side, a few hours after they basically terminated the contract with Anthropic, OpenAI signed a classified AI deployment agreement with the Pentagon using a cloud-only architecture, meaning models run on OpenAI infrastructure rather than on edge devices or government-controlled hardware, which is central to how they enforce their safety constraints. The agreement includes 3 stated red lines: no mass domestic surveillance, no direct autonomous weapon systems, and no automated high-stakes decisions without human approval. But they did allow them, and they retained the full control, but they did allow them to keep the any lawful purpose, which people say is a very common way to get around some of these restrictions around domestic surveillance and autonomous weapons. If they can point to laws. And then also the point is, in my mind, is that the current administration doesn't seem to really care about laws. So also somewhat problematic. So, it looks like a pretty big coup for OpenAI, who happens to have a lot of investors who are either friends with the administration or in the administration, who basically took out their number one competitor in the federal market through this action, and then basically signed the exact same contract with them with actually more restrictions because they're still maintaining access to all the servers and they control what goes through them. And basically they're set to win a lot of money from the government based on this. All a little bit suspect.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see kind of where all this flushes out, because the news kind of always blows it up. And I think I saw that there was after all that, there was something I read about mass unsubscribing and deleting from OpenAI and ChatGPT and all these things. Even if you talk about it being a supply chain risk, going back to Anthropic, it's how do you prove where it was used? And does that mean you can't use Anthropic models anywhere? So even if you are in GitHub Copilot, you can't use Opus or Sonnet, and in my head, it doesn't really mean you're going to get anywhere. This is just people blowing smoke and being upset, and saying because they couldn't get something and they had a microphone at their hands. So all this, I feel kind of will take a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's gonna take years to court. And then also the precedent that could be set potentially that, the government can basically declare any vendor they want to as a threat to supply chain risk, feels like it's going to violate several amendments of the Constitution. So, I expect this is going to become a Supreme Court battle at some point. How many years it takes to get to the Supreme Court will depend. Well, we'll come back to this in a couple of minutes here, but let's first jump into some new models this week. New toys, new shiny things. Gemini 3.1 Flash Lite launched. This is in preview. That was the Gemini API and Google AI Studio and Vertex AI, priced at 25 cents per million input tokens and $1.50 per million output tokens. Compared to 2.5 Flash, the new model delivers 2.5x faster time to first answer token and 45% higher output speed according to artificial analysis benchmarks. The model includes configurable thinking levels, letting developers dial reasoning depth up or down depending on task complexity, which is pretty nice. They also revealed NanoBanana 2, technically named Gemini 3.1 Flash Image, which replaces both the standard and pro variants of the previous NanoBanana models across Gemini, AI Studio, Vertex AI, and Flow simultaneously. The model draws on Gemini 3.1 LLM web knowledge to improve object fidelity and infographic accuracy, and Google claims it delivers text rendering quality comparable to previous pro tier at Flash tier speeds. I'm excited to plug this one into our show cover generator because I've been using NanoBanana 1, which is pretty good. And if you've checked out our show covers lately, you've noticed they've become fun cartoons based on our show titles. So that's all thanks to AI, because I'm not artistic, and neither is any of our other co-hosts. But it's been fun to do those.
Definitely not.
And then GPT 5.3 Instant is our last model from OpenAI. This is the new default model in ChatGPT available to all users today and to developers by the API. There's GPT-5.3-chat-latest, with GPT 5.2 Instant remaining available for paid users until June 3rd. This is one of those things that's kind of annoying, and some developers are really not liking this, is these new models come out and they're great, but they don't have time to test and get things into the new models before they deprecate the old ones. So that's a bit of a complaint I've been starting to hear from some developers. The other thing is they say this has a 26.8% reduction in high stakes domains like medicine, law, and finance for hallucinations, and a 19.7% reduction when using internal knowledge bases based on OpenAI's internal evaluations. I do have to say that the amount of hallucinations I catch ChatGPT in is definitely higher than some of the other models that I play with. Not the open source ones. The open source ones are also bad at hallucinations, to be honest. But at least the big ones, Anthropic, Gemini, this one, I feel like they have the highest rate of hallucinations, at least from my experience. I don't know about yours.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I don't have data to do it, but I live mainly in Claude, and I don't feel like the amount of hallucinations, especially in the 4.5 and 4.6, feel like has gone down. I work in a Azure shop and I use Windows, so we still do a good amount of programming in PowerShell, and there is like, you used to just pull up like, hey, get this thing. I would just make up a get dash PowerShell command, and I kind of feel like that's gone down quite significantly in the last couple models. 4.5, 4.6, which I think is great. I ran kind of a head-to-head on something, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. It was right before 4.6 came out, so somebody can figure out the math of whenever that was. And GPT kind of went down like weird side paths and didn't produce anything useful out of it. The one thing I do want to come back to, what you mentioned, which is kind of testing the models before you kind of roll them out into production. One of the things that, as you work through any of the living in the security world also, the ISO 42201 or any of the customer questionnaires, is how do you actually test these models and prove that they're working and everything along those lines. And a lot of these customers and questionnaires, and I think even the 42201, all require measurable statistics. And with the rate of these things coming out, before, I feel like it was like, oh, this new EC2 instance is now a little bit faster and better. Should we move to it? Great, let's run our tests on it. But with things rolling out and you get only about 6 months to really play with it, before you're like, okay, I'm so far out of date, you have to kind of automate your entire test suite, which again, more overhead and more things to do in life.
Agreed. Oh, hi, Ryan. Welcome.
Hey there.
Do you get your kids fed?
The emergency is over, and
That's good.
Everyone is fed and quiet so far.
Yeah, we described your house as a Lord of the Flies type situation when the children are hungry, and that you had to address that. So
and I'm solo parenting, so it's like it's
a double whammy.
Really Lord of the Flies right now.
Yeah,
I'm impressed you're recording, honestly.
Yeah, no, I would have bailed out. I'd be like, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
To be fair, it's like 10 o'clock, so we kind of already went down that path a little bit.
Exactly.
I mean, I was sort of hoping that you were busy on your roadie tour for the Eagles, since that's apparently your lifelong dream.
How dare you?
Hey, it's not me. Heather put it.
Yeah, Heather's gonna get a talking to as well. Like I saw.
Well, we just finished up the AI section. So, did you have any comments you wanted to say about Anthropic getting kicked out by the federal government and replaced by OpenAI, or before we get into the next juicy topic, which will probably also relate to that somewhat?
I just find it kind of annoying when like the part of the news cycle that I'm trying to ignore starts to interact with the part of the news cycle that I feel is like necessary for my job. I'm like, oh no. That's really my only comment, is that I've been really conflicted into, do I read this or not? Because I want to know the details of what OpenAI acquiesced to, but I haven't done my research, so I don't have a lot to say.
Yeah, we were just talking about the oddness of all the timing and impacts of some of those things. So
chaos, yeah.
Well, we're moving on to AWS, and this weekend
Again.
the administration, for the multiple times this year, has decided to overthrow another government. This time with Israel, and in this case, they attacked Iran. Which, Iran does not have any data center regions that we talk about for any of our cloud providers, except for the fact that Iran was not happy with being attacked, especially since we killed their supreme leader, in one of the attacks. And so they have been basically attacking the rest of the Middle East and key security targets, and they targeted 2 data centers in Dubai. And so Operation Epic Fury from the US has impacted 2 regions, ME Central 1 in UAE and 2 AZs, and then also debris that hit an adjacent target in Bahrain took out an AZ and ME South 1, and they basically were down for about 3 days. They're actually still recovering in those locations. They do have power back on those locations, but the most telling part to me is that the statement on the status page from Amazon is, due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, both affected regions have experienced physical impacts to infrastructure as a result of drone strikes. In the UAE, 2 of our facilities were directly struck, while in Bahrain, a drone strike in close proximity to one of our facilities caused physical impacts to our infrastructure. Even as we work to restore these facilities, the ongoing conflict in the region means that the broader operating environment in the Middle East remains unpredictable, and we recommend that customers with workloads running in the Middle East consider taking action now to back up data and potentially migrate all workloads to alternative AWS regions, including the EU, US, and other parts of Asia. So, this is a big deal because, as our show title said tonight, both Matt and I were like, man, DR is going to become a real big deal now because, the chances of having a military action that takes out a data center all of a sudden now came to fruition. And, from very low percentages of that chance to now, their targets, these regions. And it's shown now that, wherever these regions are, they're going to be potential military targets. And, you might want to consider that if you're looking at living near a data center, which is maybe why some people are very upset about data center build outs in their backyards. And this is a big deal, and it's going to become also a big deal for data sovereignty and sovereignty laws. And if you're in the business where you need to host data for other customers in these across the globe, your job just got a lot harder. So unfortunately, that's the reality we now live in after this weekend, unfortunately. And so now we will continue to see the fallout from this and the long-term implications to the U.S. economy, U.S. companies, and the global stage. But hug ops to the Amazon team who are recovering these data centers in the middle of potentially being attacked again. Definitely something I didn't really consider when I was racking and stacking servers back in the day, that I could potentially be attacked militarily. So very scary times.
Well, and considering where you did that as well.
Well, there I did expect it when I worked in Iraq. But, I was thinking, I'm in the data centers in Seattle and in Las Vegas, and I'm just racking and stacking servers. I'm like, it's no big deal. I'm just doing that. Now it's like, wow, this, something goes down. This is a target while I'm here. So,
yeah. No, I mean, and it makes sense to be a target, right? There's a lot of infrastructure. If you want, same what we're seeing in Ukraine, where they're attacking power infrastructure. Like, I get it.
I mean, logically it makes sense, but in the back of my head, it wasn't ever anything I've ever really thought about was, to how do, have the most, terror in the world is go attack AWS's, data centers, and half the internet's going to be down permanently, and half the companies would probably be down if you did a coordinated attack across multiple regions and data centers and everything along those lines. And somewhere now I'm on some FBI watch list as I'm saying this, but it's crazy. Again, that's kind of the world we live in, where, the data center, because, government or anything else is hosted there, that, my day job, your day job, anything now, dramatically matters for these things. And now I actually to have a reason to do DR versus just saying the odds of, 3 zones going down and taking down the region, Azure has more motivation to get it back up and running and can do their DR probably faster than we can do all of ours, and tests and do all that is probably not true anymore.
If can't DR a physical data center.
Maybe it's time to create an agentic DR agent story, because the other side of this is, if you're a technologist, and this is Corey Quinn's point, if I'm in technology and an attack happens on American soil and takes down data centers, you're not enacting the DR. you're going to be selling yourself to the highest bidder who needs, as a mercenary to basically help with whatever you need to help with. And if someone's offering, $500 an hour to get their infrastructure back up or help them get their systems back up, are you going to be worried about your day job at that point? Because already the day job may not exist. It may not, the world has changed dramatically in that scenario. And so like these things, they're scary to think about. And that's kind of the, I go back in my career to, mid 2000s, SaaS is kind of new, the number of customers who required, proof of annual DR tests and wanted to be involved was like pretty low. And it's kind of consistently been pretty low. And then SOC, you put your DR test into your SOC and then kind of everyone just checks the boxes. I was like, well, they have DR. And now with this, I suspect that we're going to go back to the era where customers want to be involved in your DR test. They want to be able to validate that their services all function and work. And this also puts pressure on even your DR that you have today. So that becomes interesting too. So lots of potential future investment in the DR automation space and how do you make DR easier? Because let's not kid ourselves. DR for most companies is difficult. Even the ones that are good at it suck at it. I mean, Yahoo, where Ryan comes from, they always talk about how they would fail out of complete data centers, but when they did that, they still had problems.
Mm-hmm.
And
for sure,
Cloudflare, today has problems where they find dependencies in a single data center that they had accidentally built, not because anybody intended to make it a single point of failure, just the way certain things connected and routed, it became a single point of failure. And so, the scrutiny on DR has become now dramatically increased, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the only solution really is to make it not a DR. Right, like it's
make it active. But then
it has to be business as usual, and that was sort of the Yahoo way. And you're right, there's still absolutely issues with it, but
for the average company, hot is just so expensive. You're running your databases in multiple regions. You're running your compute. You're taking whatever your traffic is, and then you bring it in one region, but your SQL writer is in the other region. So now, if you happen to be on your Canary, 5% of traffic that hits the, slower region, like now that its end user experience gets affected. Because that's kind of one of the things I always told people.
Maybe we can actually use this to modernize to, newer database technologies that have global span tables. And,
like all I think is like this is one more reason that NoSQL and moving to Spanner and moving to other solutions that don't have that same dependency are a good idea. And distributed databases that are distributed versus tied to a legacy OLTP model like Oracle and SQL Server. The long-term ripples, not only of AI in our business, but also of this event and what happened to Amazon could have happened to anybody else. I mean, the only lucky side of this is that Azure is not fully built out in that region. KSA has not been impacted for Google yet. But like even in the KSA case, Google is only planning to do one region in KSA.
Wow.
And so, the problem is in the data sovereignty phase, like, where's the DR? Well, we'll just use one of the AZs as the DR. Well, okay, two AZs got taken out. Now what's your story? So yeah, it's definitely going to change things. Long-term ramifications are here. Like it won't change it tomorrow, but as this military Operation Fury wraps up in 4 weeks to 45 years from now, things will change, and the world is no longer the same place it was a week ago, which is kind of scary in a lot of ways. So, I hug your loved ones. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And for anyone who ever heard me joke about like when the data center is a smoking crater, I meant from an asteroid. An asteroid.
Yeah.
So not funny, Matt.
Not as funny. We actually have a story coming up in the Google section that that's just poor wording on that show title, that blog post this week. Similar problems. But Amazon is making a $50 billion investment into OpenAI as part of its $110 billion funding round that also includes SoftBank and NVIDIA, valuing OpenAI at $730 billion pre-money. Separately, OpenAI and AWS are expanding their existing cloud agreement by $100 billion over 8 years. Man, I want to negotiate that EA, which an analyst estimate could add roughly $17 billion annually to AWS revenue. A key technical component of the deal is OpenAI committing to consume 2 gigawatts of capacity on Amazon's Trainium chips, giving AWS a high-profile validation of its in-house AI silicon at a scale that helps justify Amazon's $200 billion capital expenditure plan for 2026. I mean, are we saying Anthropic's investment into Trainium was not a good enough of a high-profile customer? Sort of a weird statement. AWS and OpenAI will co-create a stateful runtime environment delivered through Amazon Bedrock, allowing enterprise customers to build AI agents that retain context and handle complex multi-step tasks, with AWS serving as the exclusive third-party cloud distribution provider for OpenAI Frontier. Microsoft does retain exclusivity over stateless OpenAI API calls, meaning simple one-and-done AI requests still route through Azure, while Amazon is positioning AWS as the infrastructure layer for stateful, context-aware, and agent-based workloads where the compute intensity and revenue potential are substantially higher. They're also maintaining their existing partnership with Anthropic. And so, again, this is just no one has enough GPU capacity for everybody. And so the more you can spread the load around, the happier everyone's going to be. Anthropic, especially after this weekend's actions, has become very popular for a lot of people. Yeah. And so that's definitely been a problem. Anthropic's had a lot of downtime this last week as there's just been a crush of new load coming onto their servers.
Yeah. As my life revolves around Claude now, I noticed.
Yeah. I feel like this is kind of like, when clouds first started, everyone's like, we're signing a single cloud deal and that's kind of where we're going. And you kind of see that over time where it's like, nope, we're going to multi-cloud. And these AI vendors are kind of having that same thing where you need features or you need, in this case, specific GPU, and Trainium or, to these types of chips that just aren't in existence in these places. So you have to go multi-cloud in order to really get it. Now, the question is, it sounds like most of these companies are, at least Claude and OpenAI, from what I'm reading through the, tea leaves here, is they're kind of sending certain types of traffic to each place. And, as this kind of called out, but, Anthropic's kind of had the same type of thing in it, where it means they're still not, like we were just talking about, going hot to both these cloud providers. There really still sounds like they're just choosing which traffic goes where. It kind of would like for them to go more true hot and just route the traffic to whichever way has capacity and available. So if, Azure has an issue in East 2 where a lot of their compute is, or AWS has US YOLO 1 that goes down, they can just dynamically route that traffic to the other place. But it doesn't really feel like that's the way they're building out that backend systems.
It's a big size too, 50 billion. Like Amazon's investment in Anthropic is what, 10 billion? Like it's not nearly the same size.
Oh yeah, they might be bigger now. I think originally they started at 10 billion, but I think they have done further rounds. But I mean the biggest thing is I'm like $17 billion in new AWS revenue to pay for, their $200 billion in capital investment. Like, where does that come from in the global economy? And the only place that I think of is massive layoffs. That's all I can see. I don't know how.
Oh no, we've made up money for years. We'll just make up some more.
I mean, you print more money, then just make inflation worse, and then nothing as good happens out of that. So I am more and more convinced every day that we are in an AI bubble. Like I do not see how they're going to generate the revenues required to cover the capital investments that all of these cloud providers are making. It just doesn't, it doesn't pan out. I mean, I did some comparisons to the .com era. I normalized the capital spend between the two, and I was looking at the charts, and I'm like, we already spent 3.5x what we spent in the .com bubble, and that was a bubble. And, I see the same problem. Like the issue there was we had all these companies investing a ton of capital to build out these businesses, and then people weren't using enough. Mm-hmm. And they weren't making enough money. And then if you look at AI today, it's heavily subsidized. And so you have all of this, are people going to be willing to pay, is the goal right now, like keep the prices really low and then jack them up later when there's no one, there's no other option. And now everyone's like, oh my God, all this stuff that was super cheap is now thousands of dollars. And we have to go back to doing the show notes manually. I'll be really sad that day. But it's like, I don't know. I don't get how they get 17 billion. I mean, there's just one. This is the only one. This is OpenAI, and they're gonna make $17 billion new revenue. Like, okay, fine, but it's not just them. It's Azure, and it's Oracle, and it's Google, and it's all these guys, and they're all saying the same thing. And I'm like, where's the revenue gonna come from? Like, that's what I don't understand. That's the part I'm confused about. So and now we had to build brand new Patriot missiles because we just blew them all up in Iran. So the government's not buying it. It's just crazy.
Well, maybe those missiles are AI driven, so the government is buying. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Amazon Security Hub Extended offers full-stack enterprise security with curated partner solutions. This is a new plan that bundles curated third-party security tools from partners like CrowdStrike, Okta, Splunk, Zscaler, and Proofpoint directly into Security Hub console, covering endpoint, identity, email, network, and cloud security in one place. AWS acts as the seller of record for all partner solutions, meaning customers get a single consolidated bill, pre-negotiated as pay-as-you-go pricing, and no longer term commitments, which removes the overhead of managing separate vendor contracts. All security findings from both AWS native services and partner tools are normalized using the Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework, or OCSF, and automatically aggregating to Security Hub, making cross-environment threat correlation more straightforward. Enterprise support customers get unified level 1 support across all participating solutions, which reduces the friction of figuring out which vendor to contact when issues span multiple tools. And the extended plan is generally available now across all commercial regions where Security Hub is supported. And thank you, Amazon. It's only taken you 10 years to get to this point. Because this is cool. And this is actually, I hope all SIEM vendors do this. Build partnerships with your security vendors, standardize the inputs, and make connectors for those things that all connect together. And if I can do all that through my cloud vendor, who I'm already have commitments with, I think that's fantastic.
And I don't have to make our security team spend 6 months writing parsing rules. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, but even like now I've taken all the friction out of doing other contracts and doing all that. It's all through my Amazon bill. Like, it's just, these are the vendors that the security teams want to use, and security teams love their vendors and they love their tools. So they don't want to all move to cloud native. So embrace the fact they don't want to all move to cloud native and make it easy to use the tools with the cloud. That's what I wanted. And that's what I wanted for 10 years. And so Amazon has finally given this one to me, which I appreciate.
Yeah, well, Security Hub is finally growing into a real tool.
That too.
Like it did the last few years. Like, they started with Guard Duty, which was great, but it wasn't a SIEM, and so now this is, they're getting to that place where Security Hub has all the functionality you need for SIEM and SOAR. Even it's not quite there yet for SOAR, but it's getting there.
All right, let's move. We have a couple quick hits this week. Amazon has finally announced the encryption controls are exiting the free preview on March 1st, introducing a fixed hourly charge for non-empty VPCs with the feature enabled in either monitor or enforce mode. And if you were excited about this because you were like, "Yay, we get this thing out of the box and it's going to be amazing," go check the price, because oh my god,
and then cry,
cry a little bit.
Yeah.
Up to 22 cents, I think I saw was the highest one, but like 15 to 22 cents per region per VPC. That adds up real fast.
Price per non-empty VPC per hour. So if you have a lot of VPCs out there, each of them costs that 22 cents. That's in the Hong Kong region. But I mean, like the main ones in the US that probably a majority of our listeners, like 15 cents per hour for each of them. Each VPC that's not empty. Like, oh my god. You can think about a massive multi-account project or a company, like this could go expensive very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean the pricing means that this is trying to get a compliance envelope encryption control met, right? Like that's what this is, right? Where you're gonna throw money at it because you kind of have to for some reason, right?
Which, I mean, again, it's good for finance and healthcare, but man, it's gonna cost. Like, so yeah, definitely glad it can't. Look, I'm glad it exists. I hope it gets a price cut at reInvent. How's that?
Yeah.
I mean, so if you just have one VPC and you have DR, $225 out the door before you do anything.
But no one has just two VPCs.
No.
Well, that's why, like, I was thinking about like the compliance bit, right? Where you've got a little island of workload that you're trying to like wrap all the things around. Like,
oh yeah, if you had a control, if you had a control tier VPC, that's where you want to have the most security because all the stuff coming in out of the control tier from other VPCs. That's what you're thinking. I mean, that makes some sense.
Yeah, either a control tier or like you have, so there's definitely ways that you sort of wrap everything up in that, and you just meet the compliance that way. So if you have like a mutual TLS, or if you have certain things like that, you can, Kubernetes and you enable, service mesh, you kind of get that as long as you're using the right encryption modules. So I can see why they're sort of doing that in the same way. And a lot of companies do just throw everything on a single VPC with shared subnets. But good luck with that.
Good luck. And then our final Amazon story, policy and Amazon Bedrock Agent Core is now generally available, giving security and compliance teams a way to define and enforce tool access rules for AI agents without touching agent code, which is a meaningful separation of concerns for enterprise governments. The natural language to CEDR conversion is a practical feature, letting non-developers author policies that automatically translate to AWS open source policy language, lowering the barrier for ops and compliance teams to participate in agent governance. The agent core gateway acts as an inline policy enforcement point, intercepting agent tool traffic and evaluating each request for allowing or denying access, which mirrors familiar patterns of the API gateway and service mesh architectures. The feature is available across 13 AWS regions at launch, including major US, European, and Asian Pacific regions, giving organizations with data residency requirements for reasonable coverage from day one. Pricing details were not specified in the announcement, so I'll check that out and see what that's going to cost us. But in general, I really like this as an announcement. This is one area that I feel Vertex is a little bit behind, is in particularly in security tooling around agents and really AI use cases in general. And so, Amazon may have a great model like Nova that people actually want to use, but at least they have the tooling around the stuff to at least use other people's models.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is my day job every day now, and it's terrible because you're right. We are Google Shop, and there's just not a lot of tooling there. I like the Cedar natural language processing, but I wonder how practical it is to write policies that allow agent to agent and tool communication. Like it's kind of a difficult thing to do when everything's the wild west right now. Like, what policy do you write?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's the fact that you can at least approach it that way. I think it's helpful because when you first get into Cedar, I remember when they first announced it. What was the old security conference called? Reinforce. They announced the thing and they were showing us the math, and you and I were like, "This is cool, but I don't understand any of the math." And like then the policy language came out and it was like, "Okay, it's not the math, but it's not easy either." And then to be able to make it easy for a compliance person to write something, that's nice. So I hope that gets better. But it looks like consumption based for policy authorization requests are, there's 4 zeros there, guys. I don't. That's 10,000. 25 cents per 10,000 per authorization request. I don't even know how. And then 13 cents per 1,000 input tokens for the AI part of it. So yeah, I mean, it's not terribly expensive. So it's that, unlike the encryption service. So that's good. But definitely, we should really talk to Google about that. Like, what's their plan for security and Vertex? Because I feel they're really behind.
Yeah, it's already in the works for me, because it is sort of struggling through the tooling right now. It's been difficult.
Yeah, you should invite me to that too, because I'm curious. Will do. And then let's move on to GCP, whose title this week is not in good form. Combat API sprawl. We're going to have to remove those languages from everything soon. API sprawl using Apogee API Hub. This now integrates directly with the gateway to automatically synchronize API definitions, open API specs, and gateway configurations in near real time, giving platform teams a single control plane for APIs spread across multiple gateways and platforms. The new specification boost add-on, currently in public preview, uses AI to scan API specs for gaps like missing usage examples or undefined error codes, and then generates an enhanced parallel version labeled Spec Boost Draft with overriding the original, so teams can compare before adopting. The core problem being addressed is that incomplete or undocumented APIs cause AI agents to fail at function calling or miss APIs entirely, so centralizing and enriching specs directly improves agent reliability in your agentic workflow. Both features are available now, with API Gateway users seeing onboarding prompts directly in the console, and pricing details for the Spec Boost add-on are not specified yet, but coming soon.
I mean, undocumented APIs is always a problem, whether it's you're using it or one team uses something they don't know, or a client finds what should be a dark API that is public, and that always becomes a problem. So a way to centralize that and, kind of help address API sprawl in general is a great thing and will make people's lives so much better.
Agreed. Google's Cloud's polyglot storage approach for chatbot memory combines memory store for Redis, Cloud Bigtable, and BigQuery to handle short, mid, and long-term conversation history, respectively, addressing a common scaling challenge for conversational AI applications. This is all for the new improved chatbot memory. Memory store for Redis handles the hot layer with sub-millisecond latency using Redis lists and rpush commands, with Bigtable serving as durable midterm storage using a user ID session and reverse timestamp key pattern to enable efficient range scans across millions of simultaneous sessions. And Bigtable's garbage collection policies allow teams to retain only recent data, such as the last 60 days, in the high-performance tier, while older data flows asynchronously to BigQuery via PubSub and Dataflow. Cloud Store handles unstructured multimedia artifacts using URI pointer strategy with signed URLs, keeping the primary database lean while maintaining secure, time-limited access to files generated or uploaded during your conversation. This architecture is relevant to any team building production-scale agentic applications on Vertex AI Agent Builder, particularly in industries like customer service, healthcare, and financial services, where maintaining accurate long-term conversation context is a compliance or user experience requirement.
I love this. This type of thing is like, this isn't a new service. This isn't new functionality of services. This is just reference architecture that people can use and copy for a relatively new pattern of application, right? So a lot of people haven't really solved this at scale yet with how do you maintain chat history memory and do all those things. So I love that they publish this and how to do it. And it's something that if I ever, get into the chat, app writing phase of my life, I'm going to copy. So it's fantastic.
Agreed.
I suppose it will have to make money though, because it's using Bigtable and Bigtable's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, like they're just driving money in other tools. That's all that's happening. But I mean, but being able to have conversational memory is such a huge advantage for the agentic agent, and even the ability to be able to reference back chat history, to be able to query that. I mean, there's so many benefits. Like it's super annoying when you go to a chat bot and you're like, well, remember yesterday we talked about this thing, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I really love Claude, again, because it has a pretty robust memory infrastructure to, I'll reference things like, hey, I'm working on this thing. He's like, oh, well, are you using that for the cloud pod, or are you using that for your other project, or are you using it because depending on which of those contexts you want me to think about this in, I have different answers. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, now I'm intrigued. What are the answer for all three of those contexts? Exactly. And it gives you different insights and intel. And like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. There was something I was talking to about. I don't remember what it was, but it was something with my son, and I was asking him some advice on something, and then like later on, I was asking him some other question. I was like, "Is this about your son?" I'm like, okay, that's a little creepy. Yeah. No, it's not. In fact, it's about me, but we are related, so things happen. But it's kind of interesting. Spanner is getting a columnar engine in preview, adding columnar storage alongside traditional row-based storage to enable analytical query acceleration up to 200x on live operational data without impacting transactional workloads. If you know anything about columnar databases, you don't know how cool that is. But for those of you who are in the data lake space, columnar is a pretty big speed improvement for a lot of use cases when you're doing queries on different fields in the database that don't necessarily have indexes. And so you can take a query that runs on traditional OLTP type table that takes 30, 40 minutes, move it to a columnar setup where you want to query all the red houses, for example. And get that back in seconds, where before we had to do a table scan and it'd be a big pain in the ass. So columnar is great. I didn't know Spanner didn't already support columnar. So this is a bit of a news to me.
Yeah, me too, me either.
But I am glad to see this now arrive as well. It's a great feature. So I appreciate this one.
Yeah, I haven't really dove deep enough into querying, these stores to really know the differences in performance. I've been involved in lots of cost conversations and technologies, based off of its ability to do this. Like, it can get expensive.
It can get expensive. But again, like, for the people who use this, it's typically a data warehousing team where it's already expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's move on to Matt's Azure.
He owns the whole thing now.
Wow. I get all of Azure?
Thank
you, Justin.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for that.
You're going to be on the hook for that, hundreds of billions of dollars in capital they're spending this year. So just remember that.
Ooh. Can I at least pocket it first before and then just not pay the bill at the end?
You need a Scrooge McDuck room to go like swim in the cash that they're
swim in my golden coins.
Yeah. All right, Azure announcing new public preview capabilities in Azure Monitor Pipeline, which is a service that I don't actually know what it monitors. But assume it's a pipeline because, again, naming for Azure is hard. It now supports TLS and mutual TLS for TCP-based ingestion endpoints in public preview, allowing teams to encrypt data in transit and enforce mutual authentication without relying on external proxies or custom gateways. This is relevant for regulated industries and edge deployments where plain TCP ingestion no longer meets security requirements. The new execution placement configuration gives Kubernetes users direct control over how pipeline instances are scheduled across nodes, addressing practical problems like port exhaustion, multi-tenant isolation, and available zone distributions. Data transformations allow teams to filter, aggregate, and normalize telemetry before it reaches Azure Monitor, including converting raw syslog or Ceph messages into standardized schemas using KSQL templates. All their capabilities are in public preview today and target organizations running Azure Monitor Pipeline in an on-premise infrastructure, edge locations, and large Kubernetes clusters. I just don't know what this is exactly.
It feels like service mesh for certain services.
It's like a bridge to on-prem though. Like that's where I'm like, huh?
It's their ETL pipeline service. So it's having MTLS on your ETL pipeline to essentially be able to say, for this customer, for all of our stuff, it is encrypted in transit the entire way. And we know it is because we're using MTLS and it's encrypted with our certificate. So because it is their pipeline, their ETL service, that's kind of why this is a big deal.
But do you need mutual TLS for that typically? Like it's a
checkbox to make some security
I know, but
person happy.
It's annoying.
See,
checkbox.
Look at yourself.
I know.
Tell me about it.
Oh, I'm not in the risk side of the business. Careful now.
Then they're fighting words. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't care about risk. I just want all the tools.
See, now you got me. Yeah. Security
I
engineer.
want to spend all the money and don't care about why we're spending it. Just want to spend the money. We're good.
Checking boxes. That's why you spend the money. Microsoft is rightfully expanding their sovereign cloud offering with 3 new capabilities targeting organizations that need to operate in fully disconnected environments: the Azure Local Disconnected Operations, Microsoft 365 Local Disconnected, and large model support in Foundry Local. These are aimed at government, defense, and regulated industries where external connectivity may be intentionally restricted or prohibitive, like potentially in a war zone in Iran. Azure Local Disconnected Operations allow organizations to run infrastructure with Azure governance and policy controls without any cloud connectivity, meaning management and workload execution stay entirely within customer-operated environments. This is now generally available worldwide. Perfect timing. The pricing is not publicly listed. I'm going to say expensive, and depending on the hardware and licensing configuration you plan to use. Microsoft 365 Local Disconnected brings Exchange Server, SharePoint Server, and Skype for Business Server into the sovereign private cloud boundary. Oh,
okay. Question. I thought Skype was dead.
I thought so too. So
but this is Skype for Business. It's completely separate.
Well,
yeah.
I know when you see the Teams card, something like if it doesn't load right, like my laptop, it actually will say like Skype in the URL still.
Yeah, I mean Teams is really Skype, so.
So I know it's not dead, but like I thought they were trying to kill it off completely. Maybe I'm wrong still.
And you'd think this is a name, right? Just rename it. But no.
So this is a journey. I just looked this up. Skype for Business Service, formerly Microsoft Office Communications Server, which I never heard of, and Microsoft Link Server, which I have heard of.
I have heard of Link. Oh wow,
I have heard of that.
That's
one.
a throwback.
Real-time communication service offer that provide the infrastructure for enterprise instant messaging, presence, and VoIP, ad hoc and structured conferences, and PSTN connectivity through a third-party gateway or SIP trunk. It does say this was released in 2019. The last stable release was released in August of 2025. So, I mean, it's definitely still being actively developed. So, I thought they killed the Skype brand, but apparently not.
Oh, it's their subscription edition.
The Foundry Local now supports large multimodal AI models running on-premise using NVIDIA GPU infrastructure, enabling local inferencing entirely within customer-controlled data boundaries. The overall architecture is designed to span connected, hybrid, and fully disconnected modes under a consistent governance model, which reduces the operational complexity of managing separate tool sets for different connectivity scenarios. Again, released before things went down, but good timing on Microsoft's.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this will save people from having to run like full data centers, right, in regions.
Yeah. I mean, or, it's an option if you now all of a sudden find yourself in Europe and you don't trust a U.S. entity, which, is a thing that's going to happen more and more. So
we're all going to need a drink after the Our listeners are going to need 2.
I mean, it was like when Safe Harbor fell, I was like, that's really a bummer because that's going to be a pain. And then, all the sovereignty stuff has now come out of Safe Harbor. And then you're like, okay, but like, it's not really that real. And like, now it's like, no, it's real.
No, it's real. We just were, going la
We
la.
were in denial.
Yeah,
totally. So then the dumbest feature of the week, in my opinion, is a article I found.
The best subject of it.
Okay.
The best headline of the week.
The headline is using self-signed certificates with Java on Azure Functions for Linux is now something you can do with this best practice. Java developers on Azure Functions who connect to services secured by self-signed certificates frequently encounter SSL handshake errors because the JVM only trusts well-known certificate authorities by default. The recommended fix is, of course, creating a custom trust store in the persistent home directory and pointing the JVM to it via Java Ops application settings. The core reason to use home for the trust store rather than system JVM directories is that the Linux functions file system is ephemeral, meaning any changes outside /home are wiped on restart. Oh, thanks, Microsoft. One practical deployment gotcha worth noting is that zip deploy or run from package configurations can overwrite the www root contents. And so this is just a way for you to troubleshoot certificates even worse than you were troubleshooting it before. And the fact that this is something they had to write a best practice for is sort of interesting to me as well.
It's just
this is hilarious.
Best practices for self-siding
Self-side certs. That's chef's kiss. Yeah.
For like bypassing security. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's the whole reason this article's in here.
I mean, it's funny because I don't create Java anything, and so I only have to support it occasionally. But I've never had to support it on an ephemeral workload. Like, yeah, what a pain in the ass.
I mean, I've helped people with Lambda Java functions before.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine this is something if you're not using a public, URL.
Well, I mean, the beauty is in Amazon, you probably are using cert ACM, and so this isn't a problem. But does Azure have an ACM?
No,
that's the problem.
Just don't stab me more.
Well, you still got to. I mean,
you
have to be using a public domain though.
Correct.
So if it's internal traffic and it's bound for, and you don't have a routable domain, it's still screwed, even using ACM.
Well, ACM has private key, private ACM.
I know, but the CAs don't know that.
Touche. Yeah, that would be the problem there.
A couple other quick hits for Azure this week. They've announced a whole new series of alphabet soup: the DCESv6, DCEDSv6, ECESv6, and ECEDSv6.
Excuse me.
Which are I know. Thank you. Azure these are all Intel TDX confidential VMs. They're generally available using the 5th gen Intel Xeon processors to provide hardware-enforced isolation that protects data while in use, which addresses a long-standing barrier for organizations running sensitive workloads in the cloud. So thanks, I guess. Again, I don't know. I still don't understand their naming convention. I'm going to say it every time they announce a new instance. I don't get it.
I've stopped understanding any of them though. Like,
yeah,
Amazon and Google are the same. Like, it's too many now.
Yeah, I mean, like at least the main ones I get, like the G versus the I versus the A. Those are pretty clear to me on Amazon, and I'm pretty clear on the N is for the high end networking. But then like you throw the D in there, and I get confused with the D. It's something with the storage, but I don't really know.
D is the storage. It actually, they have a formula for it.
Is there a formula for the Azure ones? Because that's what I need. Like I need the key.
No, there's a formula. It's like family, subfamily, number of CPUs, constraints, additive features. So that's like storage or anything along those lines. Accelerator type, memory capacity, and then version. So it's like C is for confidential, so the DC is for confidential, the EC is for confidential. So like that's that first part. And then I have to have multiple screens open because I definitely did not memorize Azure's naming convention. If I did, God, I hate myself a little bit.
And this is why AI is going to take over the world, because like my context window is not big enough to keep this together, right? And so like even though you're going to go explain it to us all, like that information is going to be gone in a second because it's not going to stick.
Yeah, the middle E is encrypted. S is for premium SSD storage, and then V6. So I knew the V6 part. That's better.
You mean the only intuitive part? Yeah. The name.
I realized the DC
sounds for confidential. Like, okay, huh?
Yeah, then you have the list of all the families. So like the one I know is B is burstable, which I like a lot better than T series, because T, I still don't know what
T never made sense either. Yeah.
Yeah. I assume there was a reason somewhere online. I never figured that out. But like B for burstable, I got that one. I think it's C for compute and D for general. So that's like what the first letters I think always mean. And E is memory optimized because E is for something.
There was one of Amazon's. Didn't Amazon have a weird one? Like M wasn't the memory optimized one.
No, M is mixed, where R was RAM and C is compute.
That's right. And that's where I would get confused. So yeah.
Well, and you get weird ones like the X, and you get the HPC ones, and there's a bunch of weird ones.
But just the normal ones would throw me off, just because I would say M is the memory. But you're right, that's the common workload or the generalized workload.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much if MC and R are pretty much majority of people, unless you're doing GPUs and LLMs, that's the ones they need. And then there's a bunch of other ones after that. But,
and it's N in GCP for some reason that I've never cared about.
Yeah, that's the general compute for them. But they also have M, and they also have a couple other letters too.
They have a few. They have the same thing. They're just different, slightly different. And because they're only slightly different, they won't ever stick in my head because it's full of Amazon.
I wonder. You had to wonder, like, if you all could redo your naming convention, for instance, what would you change it to? Like, what's your ideal naming convention? And it's kind of like, I evolved my server naming convention over the years. Like when I first got into IT, I named all my computers after Simpsons characters. Like, that's cute, but dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you're like, okay, now I need a naming convention. I need like, things like rack location and, what is the purpose of this server? And so you evolve it over time. But like, Amazon, they designed that thing at the beginning of Cloud, and they had M1 instances.
Can't change it.
Right.
Now it's that forever. Like, would they go back and change it? And like, when do you divorce yourself from this thing that's clearly no longer working for anybody on the Azure side? And
but that supposes that there is one that's going to work, and I don't know that there is.
I don't know there is one either, but it's definitely, let's use natural language and you just describe what you want. We'll just get it for you. That's how we're going to solve this problem. We talked about it in preview, but now it's generally available. Azure Firewall Policy now supports a 2-phase draft and deploy workflow, meaning teams can stage policy changes before committing them, which reduces the risk of unintended disruptions during updates. Congratulations, GA. Woo. If you'd like to burn money, Azure has a new SKU for you this week. It supports up to 100 terabytes of storage at 2.5x increase from the previous 40 terabit cap, with no configuration changes required for existing registries to benefit automation. And of course, the name is the Azure Container Registry Premium SKU.
Mm-hmm. So no, the SKUs are there. They just bumped it from 40 to 100 terabytes.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
So now instead of 2 Windows container images, you can store 4.
Ooh, that's so fancy. Apparently, it's addressed real operational pain where enterprises were splitting workloads across multiple registries just to stay under limits because they were using Windows containers, because that's just dumb. Adding complexity to access controls and networking that had nothing to do with actual business requirements. So but why 100 terabytes? I mean, again, like this is something like, why wouldn't you just back whatever your container registry solution is with your blob storage?
Because you're doing it wrong.
Oh, this is just charging your customers. That's all this is. It is absolutely backed by the blob store, but
I guess I just understand like why you wouldn't just charge for usage, and then I don't understand I don't understand the artificial 100 terabit limitation. That's what I don't understand.
Because you have to put a limit somewhere. Otherwise, someone stupid is going to be, I can't launch my container that's 500 terabytes.
Oh no, there's an architecture reason somewhere in the back end where they're stringing 2 cans together, and the minute you string enough cans together, you have to string another can to another place. It doesn't work out.
I mean, if you have a 100 terabit container, I can't even fathom that.
Oh,
I guess, but again, this is the container registry. This is where I like. The point is like like this is where I struggle with it. I'm like, again, yes, you should have a per container storage limit, and I'm sure there is one in AKS. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, no, this is their tenant management, right? Because this is the only reason you have a limited the tenant limit is because you've organized something about the way you're managing the back end into groups, and something about that prevents scaling, right?
Yeah, it just seems
because it's not the storage layer. That's been solved many times, but their abstraction layer they're using for managing Azure tenants is.
But again, like, why would if you're going to go fix that? Why would you go from 40 terabits to 100 terabits?
Because it's easier, Justin. That's why. Otherwise, it's rewriting the whole thing. It is like this is your day job. You sit in these meetings.
but I would argue, and if I was in the meeting, I argue like this is like we need to be able to bridge 100 multiple. Like you're basically saying customers are working around you by provisioning multiple of this thing. So okay, cool. So we could do the same thing. We can provision multiple of the 100 terabit thing or the 40 terabit thing, whatever, depending on how much contiguous space I need. But then, like, if I can abstract the complexity of that and then make it just look like it's unlimited to the user, but in the background I'm blanking into 100 terabit segments, fine, I don't care. That's my point. It's like I would abstract the complexity.
So your development team can rewrite the logic, or you could just make your infrastructure team lay bigger pipes. Which one will you choose?
I'm fixing that.
Every time.
He's like, I plead the fifth.
I mean, it's not what we would choose, but it's the good fight that we fight every day.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So,
and then our final story for this week is Azure API Management is rolling out updated resource limits starting in March, aligning classic tier limits with the V2 tier limits across entities like API operations, tags, products, and subscriptions. And I hope when they say they're aligning them, that it means they're lowering the V2 ones to the classic tier. I assume they figured out whether the tech debt was preventing the classic tier from scaling. and now they meet the V2 reason, which makes the whole point of why do you have V2 silly. But here we are. So there you go.
Because moving is hard.
Unless V2 is for something else as well as limits, but
And it probably is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's APIMS V1, V2 are all nightmares. So, but it's nice that they're kind of moving stuff in a more streamlined, level. So migration and things like that should be a little bit easier over time.
No, that's a plus. Well, gentlemen, we have woken to our new national nightmare of DR is real and Anthropic is no longer allowed for the federal government. We don't know what that means yet, and we're gonna find all these things out. And
what did OpenAI do to get that contract?
No. See, what happened was they apparently kissed the president's ass and treated him like the the authoritarian that he is, and the Anthropic guy wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
so that's what I heard.
Yeah, that's just how life is these days. So
yeah, indeed. Well, we will see you next week here in the cloud, hopefully, and have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
And that's all for this week in cloud. Head over to our website at thecloudpod.net, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, join our Slack community, send us your feedback, and ask any questions you might have. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.